Hey everybody, and welcome back to the Always Bayern Chelsea show. Recording this one here on Monday, September 8th, giving you a preview for the weekend's matches, Chelsea and Brentford in the EPL and Bayern and Hamburg in the Bundesliga. And yes, you saw that right. It's a brand new intro. So please subscribe to the YouTube channel, leave us a like, leave us a comment. If you like the intro, I'd love to hear from you. Because, blood, sweat, and tears, of course, went into making that, and we're really trying to up the production value on this show. So, welcome in.
If you don't like the intro, please also leave a comment because then I will go back and forth with you wherever it is that you comment and I'll roast you for free.
For free. Wow. Well, there you go. Yeah, I mean, we're on an international break right now, so there's been a little bit of a lull in the action. The transfer window is closed. I feel like, last weekend and prior to, I was just my phone was blowing up with news every hour of the day. So now I feel like things are settling back in and we're getting back to matches, and that's what I care the most about. As fun as it is to follow all the drama, listen to all of Uli Hoeneß's dumbass statements, um, I'm here for the matches, and that's what we're getting back to. That's what we're previewing in this episode.
Well, you said it, so I'm going to take us right to that statement from Uli Hoeneß before we even begin here because we got to talk about it. It applies directly to Bayern Munich and Chelsea Football Club. Thoughts on what he said about Nico Jackson?
Yeah, so if you didn't hear, Uli, being Uli, like it's nothing new from him. He just says stuff all the time. Sometimes it's true, sometimes it's not true. But he tries to spin stuff in favor of Bayern all the time. And you could, go through this TV show appearance that he did, and he had tons and tons of quotes. We'll talk about Nico on this show, but he also did like throw Eberl under the bus and said, "Yeah, that guy's too sensitive. If I had anybody under me that I trusted, I would step down immediately." So there was a laundry list of quotes from Uli in that TV appearance. But yeah, the Nico quote, he let the cat out of the bag, and he did say that the number of matches Nico has to play. I shouldn't even say play because Uli said start. Uli said he has to start 40 matches in the Bundesliga and the Champions League, excluding the Pokal. And that's when the obligation to buy becomes a mandate. So crazy stuff if that's actually true. I think that'll never happen. So, I guess this deal is essentially what it was from the start before all the stuff happened and Nico had to go back and go back again and all that stuff. It's essentially just seemingly a loan deal without an obligation to buy, and it sounds like Bayern is not interested in meeting that lofty figure that the obligation is.
Yeah, it's very unfortunate for Nico Jackson if it is all true. As you mentioned, that amount with excluding Pokal would basically be impossible, especially when you consider that he will miss at least 4 matches for AFCON, his duty to his country, Senegal, playing in that tournament, which takes place during a lot of normal domestic league matches. So, my thoughts are kind of as follows, and this is coming from a guy that has always backed Nico Jackson. But I did say when he signed with Bayern, when the quotes came out, when Nico said he wanted to basically, train under Kane and kind of like replace him eventually. And I basically said, well, sorry, Nico, because that's not what Bayern wants for you. So I don't know what you're thinking. You're just lapping up what they're telling you. His agent, I think, is toxic for Nico. They clearly just have a weird relationship, it seems, because I think his agent's really running the show here. That much is clear to me, but it's unfortunate for Nico because if this is all true, Bayern are using him, Chelsea are kind of using him, but I don't really know because Chelsea don't get much out of it. It's just a very weird situation. Nico, quite honestly, looks like a bit of a loser here. There's a different word I'd want to use, but I think it's taken a little far to use a word many used to describe Al Horford years ago. I won't use that word here, but that's kind of what I think he's being right now, if this is all true.
Wow, inside jokes on inside jokes. Yeah, I mean, you want what's best for the player. Obviously, I want what's best for Bayern. You want what's best for Chelsea as fans of those clubs. But ultimately, like at the end of the day, he's a person, and you want what's best for him. Again, Uli says stuff all the time, so take it with a grain of salt, maybe. But yeah, I mean that 40 number, he's never gonna hit that. My understanding, I thought that the AFCON tournament was over the winter pause, so maybe he wouldn't miss four matches. But regardless, like he's not hitting 40, so it's essentially just a straight loan for this season, and you'll see what you get with him.
Yeah, it might not be four. I know for sure they miss a couple because I know Mo will miss some for Liverpool. Nonetheless, I still think Nico's gonna play well at Bayern. That does not change anything in my mind, and hopefully he still does. And then Chelsea either sell him or take him back, whatever the case. And do I really care? Because I got Mark Guiu back.
Yeah, that's another interesting wrinkle in this all is Chelsea recalling Mark Guiu from loan. You know, I think at this point we're just gonna have to wait and see how things play out in terms of matches, and maybe both Bayern and Chelsea or one or the other will be doing some business in winter. Who knows?
Has there been any word on if Nico will go right to training when he gets back from international duty? I'm assuming Senegal probably has another game coming up here. I'm assuming he probably will not play in the match this weekend, but who knows?
Yeah, I haven't heard when he's due to arrive back, but I got all that and more covered in a little bit of a preview for this Bayern Hamburg match over the weekend. Do you have any housekeeping items, or do you want to jump right into that?
No, let's jump right in.
All right, so yeah, Saturday, September 13th, Bayern is back. It's only been one weekend, I guess, without Bayern Munich ball, but I had to subject myself to two pretty putrid matches from the German national team under Julian Nagelsmann. And yeah, the 2-0 loss to Slovakia, one of the worst matches I think Germany has ever played in their history. Only their fourth time ever losing a qualifying match. So that tells you something right there. And then bouncing back, but not exactly putting up a convincing performance, beating Northern Ireland 3-1. Match was 1-1 for a long time. Germany scored two goals at the end. So I'm glad that's over for now. I'm happy to be watching Bayern Munich under maybe the anti-Julian Nagelsmann and Vincent Kompany. Now that I think about it, Nagelsmann, always keen to tinker, and of course, losing his right-hand man, Sandro Wagner, things are falling apart for Germany. So, Vincent Kompany taking on Hamburg, and we'll see later on, but I'm expecting Company not to tinker very much in this one. So, a couple things I just wanted to note off the rip. Standings, Bayern sits in first place in the table with 6 points, won both their matches. Hamburg, you have to go a long ways. They're all the way down at 15th. Obviously, Bayern beat Augsburg in their last Bundesliga match, beat Vehan Wiesbaden in the DFB Pokal, and then thrashed Leipzig in that opening week. Hamburg did win their first round matchup in the Pokal, beating a team who I've honestly never heard of. I think they're a fourth division team, Pyramasens. No idea if I'm saying that right. Winning 1-2 in extra time. Their first week matchup in the Bundesliga was a 0-0 draw at Gladbach. Again, Gladbach is without Tim Kleindienst right now, so their star player, they're a little bit weaker. Gladbach has been disappointing so far, especially without Kleindienst. And then the moment we've all been waiting for last weekend, the Hamburg derby back in the Bundesliga, one of the most electric derbies of all time. The noise there was insane. Awesome match to watch, even though it ended up a 2-0 win for St. Pauli over Hamburg. But again, Hamburg's back in the Bundesliga for the first time in 7 years, so that was a fun one. And yeah, let me just get your thoughts on the form, the shape of both teams at this point.
Yeah, I mean it's going to be interesting because you have a huge match like that for those two teams in the derby, and then you hit this international break. Maybe can reset after all the build up to that match, as well as the buildup of getting back into the Bundesliga. Huge for any club to do that. this is a historic club, historically one of the better clubs in the Bundesliga years and years ago, decades ago, really. So a lot of intrigue really for this team, this club, this city. And now you're coming off this break where hopefully you got some rest. Hopefully you can regain some of that calm energy instead of just all the excitement. But then you're playing Bayern Munich, the best club in the Bundesliga. So that to me kind of sets up for a nice storyline right there. And then we've seen Bayern, how hot they've been. The guys look in form. The guys playing on international break look to be in form. Elise, Gnabry, the bunch firing on all cylinders. So those main storylines there provide for a lot of potential in this match on Saturday.
Yeah, and you said it best. Hamburg is a Bundesliga dinosaur. They were up in the Bundesliga since the Bundesliga was formed and went down to the Zweite Bundesliga, the second tier, for the first time 7 years ago. That was the first time they were ever relegated, and they had been down there up until Merlin Polzin, a Hamburg boy himself, decided to step in and coach the squad and got them promoted again for the first time. They were kind of promoting or flirting with promotion, I should say, for the last number of years. And last year they finally did it. But I watched that match against St. Pauli, and I didn't watch their first week match against Gladbach or anything. But to me, Hamburg looked like a team who is new to the Bundesliga. And St. Pauli, they're not the best team. A lot of people predicted them to get relegated. They looked like a team that has been in the Bundesliga. So I really, yeah, I really think it's impressive what Merlin Polson did, but I don't know if he's quite ready for the big time. I don't know if he's quite ready yet for the Bundesliga. I think, again, he's a great second tier coach. He's a great Zweite Bundesliga coach, but is he ready for the Bundesliga? I don't know. Maybe this team will get a little bit better as the season goes on, but right now they haven't shown me that they are. One other storyline that connects to Bayern Munich here to mention is Daniel Peretz, the goalkeeper for Bayern on loan to Hamburg right now. Turned down a bunch of other clubs because apparently he was told he was going to be the starting keeper at Hamburg, and now he's pissed off because he is the second keeper. Their starting keeper is a guy who I feel like is a good Zweite Bundesliga keeper, got him promoted, but has not shown me anything so far in the Bundesliga. So it's kind of a tough place for Peretz to be in, and I think I would be pissed too, sticking obviously loyal with the guy that got him promoted, but I don't know if he's really the man for the job.
I would say he's not the man for the job at all based on his performance today against Italy. I mean, you got all those emotions going. He's saying he's going to fight for a spot, lays an absolute egg, according to all accounts. And that game was one of the more wild games you'll ever see in international play. Italy ends up winning 5-4. But if Peretz is trying to win this job, that is not going to do him any wonders. So you got to imagine the guy's just going through a lot right now.
It's going to be crazy. And as far as Bayern Munich goes, I did just drop a State of the Season address for the international break. So if you want my full thoughts on how I think the team fares at the moment, go ahead and watch that one. But I did want to kind of lay out a little bit of a predicted lineup, a little bit of a prediction here for this Bundesliga match. Again, I maybe let it slip before in saying that I think Company is maybe the anti-Nagelsmann, and that I think Company is just going to go chalk in this one. Chalk being the lineup that he laid out against Augsburg and Leipzig earlier in the Bundesliga. So I think Company is going to stick with it. Neuer as the keeper, Leimer as the right back, Upa and Ta as the center back, Stanisic as the left back. I think he's going to stay with Kimmich and Goretzka in the midfield, and then probably Olise at the right wing, Gnabry at the 10. I don't think Jackson is going to start in this one yet, just because, again, I don't know if he's going to be back. Don't know if he's going to be integrated yet with the team. I think we'll see Diaz at the left wing and Kane at the 9. So I think Company's just going to roll with what he has been so far.
Completely agree. I think Company is going to go with what has worked up until this point, the guys that he trusts. As I mentioned a little bit ago as well, some of those guys are firing on all cylinders for Bayern and for their countries that they play for over this break. So if these guys are playing well, they communicate well, why mess with that right now? I don't even think Nico's going to make the bench. Maybe I suppose he does just to have him there. I just think coming from Africa travel wise, not being integrated into the team at all, I don't think he's met his teammates at this point. If I were to guess, I think he went straight from Bayern to Senegal after his teammates had left the Munich area. So don't expect that, in my opinion. But nonetheless, I really just think Bayern are going to be rolling with this lineup and rolling all over the pitch against this team.
Yeah, I mean, if you want to go into a prediction here, I'm going with a 3-0 victory for Bayern Munich. I think there's maybe going to be a little bit of, I don't want to say jet lag, but these guys are playing a ton of matches, so I don't know if they're just going to be so energetic that they're going to go out there and put 7 goals away on Hamburg. I could see it happening, but I'm going to stick with maybe a little bit of a safer prediction in 3-0. But I think it's going to be a relatively comfortable 3-0. I don't think it's going to be a match like Augsburg where they collapse at the end. I think it's going to be a pretty solid, good introduction for Bayern back into club play.
Yeah, I like the sound of that. And apologies here in advance to my foreign exchange sister, Joe, from what I will call Hamburg in Germany. Beautiful family. And I'm just predicting 4-0. I don't know whether she's a fan or not of this team, but I gotta just give a shout out to Bayern here, and they're gonna destroy that city in this day. Um, win 4-0. As I said, Bayern will just be and rolling.
Yeah, I would love to see that. And a nice easy wake up in the morning, start off my weekend right. Don't have to have any sort of stress in the day. That's my ideal Saturday. So, speaking of, a few hours later, I guess 2 p.m., right? That's the Chelsea kickoff, Brentford. Another London match for Chelsea. That's all they play as London teams.
It's great. Another London match for Chelsea. The start of four matches in a row on the road for Chelsea, which is very interesting. Lucky that this one they will remain in London. We know, of course, the match that immediately follows this one. Will not speak of it right now because I'm just focused on Chelsea right now. But that being said, yes, they do remain in the beautiful city of London against Brentford. The Bees are not quite buzzing right now. Later in the summer, I think bees are starting to die down just a little bit. So we'll see what's happening with that. But they are currently coming off a brutal extra time loss to Sunderland. They were up 1-0, lose 2-1. They beat Bournemouth in the Carabao Cup. They beat Villa in the league and lost to Forest in the league. So a bit of oddities, I would say, to start the year for the Bees. They're without Thomas Frank. Of course, we know he's at Tottenham now. So it's going to be interesting for Brentford. They're trying to find their way with a new manager. And they've also lost quite a few key pieces. Mbeumo left, Vissa left. So it's really tough. Not to mention Chelsea took their set piece coach Bernardo Cueva last year. Brentford really good at set pieces over the last few years. It's a tough spot for Brentford.
Yeah, I think that's just it. I think Brentford still will take a little bit of time to figure things out. Again, you hit the nail on the head. Losing Thomas Frank, losing a handful of key players. I think it's going to be tough for them to go up against a team who's just as talented and at this point has been together for a little bit in Chelsea Football Club.
Yeah, and the funny thing about Brentford is that their now current manager Keith Andrews was actually their set piece coach. So he took over for Cueva, who went to Chelsea, and that's what Brentford has been known for. Teams like this, they need to find other ways of winning matches. Set piece is one of the best ways to do that. Corner kicks, free kicks. Now we're seeing the comeback of the long throw, which Tommy Tuchel was talking a lot about over this weekend. So it's interesting that they decide, hey, we're so good at this, we're going to make the set piece coach the manager. That to me is a very interesting move.
Yeah, I was unaware of that, and I'm not quite sure what that signifies in terms of is it some strategic move or is it just, hey, we don't have anybody else and we got to throw this guy out there. I'm not really sure to be honest.
And that's the interesting thing because clearly he must also be a good man manager. Obviously, you're a set piece coach. Does that mean your tactics are solid? Who really knows? I haven't watched a ton of Brentford this year, to be honest, yet. So I couldn't tell you in terms of their strategy, besides that they are into the set piece. So if I'm Chelsea, I'm going to be looking to establish dominance in that area. And we've seen this year to start, Chelsea, most of their goals have actually come from set pieces, a lot on corners. So I think that's arguably the main part of this game that fans should focus on. While we're talking about set pieces, the lineup for Chelsea that I'm expecting, you need that height. You need guys that command the box for those set pieces, mostly on corners. We've seen over the last couple games for Chelsea, you got Tosa and Chalobah as kind of your main center back options. I think Fofana is being nursed back, but I think you're just going to go with Tosa and Chalobah because we know they're strong in set pieces. They're taller guys on this squad that will do well with that. And I think that's going to be key. They also aren't tied to any international squads, so they'll be rested, ready to go. And then I think to round up the defensive side, you're going to see Gusto, assuming that James plays once again for England here, already played in their first match. I think if he plays in the second match, Chelsea are just going to rest him, especially coming up in that huge match on the 17th. So I think you're going to see Gusto. And then honestly, I think you're going to see Cucurella, but dear Lord, do I hope we see Yoral Hato instead. Cucurella played 90-90 again for Spain this international break. That's insane.
Yeah, I agree. I think that's the exact back line I'm going to go with for Chelsea's lineup. I think we're going to see a lot of rotation, though, to be honest, midfield and attack. I do think Enzo Maresca is going to save a lot of his normal starters for that other match that is just looming in the distance. I wonder who it could be against, but I think we'll see kind of a mix after that. In my opinion, I think we'll see probably like Santos and Caicedo in the midfield. I think we'll see Esteval on the right wing, Pedro at the 10, um, Gittins at the left wing, and we'll say George at the 9.
That'd be interesting. I part of me thinks I wouldn't mind Pedro at the 10 and playing a Guiu for these set pieces. Guiu, we've seen in the air, has been tremendous. The one goal he scored for Sunderland was in the air. I think he's probably on international break with Spain. I didn't actually check that, but I don't know. I actually think Enzo will play because he was suspended for Argentina, so he's been back at Cobham. So I think he's going to be rested and ready to be integrated. Caicedo had a knock in Ecuador's first match. Sounds like he's going to play in their second match tomorrow. So you never know with him coming back from South America. That's something to watch. Then you have to consider that for Santos too. He played a little bit for Brazil. We'll see tomorrow if he does. Lavia is technically back in training. Would never expect him to play a full 90. And then you have a Sugo as well in the midfield who apparently picked up a knock for the U21s for Portugal. So a lot of things to consider here.
Yeah, I didn't know about all these knocks. I didn't know that Enzo was suspended for Argentina, to be honest. I just assumed he played.
Yeah, no, it was kind of swept under the rug almost. Argentina just has so many big names anyway, so people hardly notice. Plus, they're already so clearly qualified for the World Cup, so these games are technically big games, but not big games. But nonetheless, I like the idea that you present with rotation. I wouldn't mind seeing Neto rested, for example, who looked great for Portugal so far. You know, I want to see more out of Gittins. He was actually playing with Achimpong today with the U21s for England. But I think this is a match where Gittins could do some things potentially. And then I always want to see Esteval. So that wouldn't be the worst option either, because let's be honest, are you starting Esteval against Bayern Munich? in the following match? Probably not. I think the moment's a little too big for him, so you might as well start him here.
Wait, they're playing Bayern?
They might be. They might be.
Yeah, I think I agree, and I do think we're gonna see Palmer against Bayern. I haven't heard anything about his injury, so I'm assuming he's gonna be out for Brentford, but my gut is telling me that they're being super cautious with him and he's gonna play against Bayern then, but I could be wrong. That's just what my gut's telling me. So I'm expecting him out for Brentford, but back for Bayern.
Super tough to decipher what's going on with the Palmer injury.
Yeah.
Lavia, Shield both back at training today. Palmer not pictured. Sometimes guys aren't pictured and they're fine. All the time we see Reece James not pictured, everybody will freak out. It's like the club release certain photos, they don't release. It's just you can't really guess based on that. But we'll see. I'm not too worried about it. If he ends up missing both, it is what it is. I want him to be healthy in the long run. But yeah, Chelsea right now, just to kind of round this up, they're really in great form, especially in the league. I believe they have not lost in the league since middle of March, going back to last year when they lost to Arsenal. So in tremendous form. Only match they've lost in their last 15-ish, I think, was against Flamengo in the Club World Cup. So this is a team that has had quite the run here, and people really aren't talking about it. So I'm really looking for them to continue their ways of dominance.
Yeah. Do you have a scoreline prediction for this one?
I do not currently have one. I will think about that, really lock it in, get in the lab. We're still 5-ish days out here, so once I kind of do those calculations in my head, I'll release it on the preview. So look out for that.
Well, I'll give you one just to tide you over. A little appetizer before the main course meal, which will be your prediction. Mine is going to be 2-0 Chelsea. I might have even thrown that in the preview already, to be honest. I can't remember. But I think, like I said, I think Maresca's going to rotate a little bit. I think Chelsea's going to win this one, not by the skin of their teeth. I think it's going to be 2-0, not a blowout by any means because of some of that rotation and some of these guys coming back from international break. But I do think they're going to win 2-0. Like you said, they've been looking good lately. Their form has been very good. So I see another 3 points for Chelsea in this one.
I'll say this much. I just calculated real quick. I think Chelsea established their dominance in the set piece game. Just destroy Brentford at what they do best. I'll give you a little taste here, my prediction. I think Tosin is gonna get a goal off a set piece.
Well, I'd be very happy for Unk if he did that. I really would be.
Would be huge. Arguably the oldest man ever seen at Stamford Bridge.
Yeah, what is he like 27?
Something like that. Yeah.
Yeah,
It's old.
crazy. Crazy. You might be the oldest. You might be Unk. You went to Stamford Bridge.
True, true. When I walked in, they handed me a cane.
Harry style.
And yeah, I was gonna say that's no dig at Harry Kane. Uh,
Now that's a grandpa in Chelsea years for sure. I think it's kind of like dog years. Chelsea, you get 1 year for every 7 years if you're a Chelsea player or something.
totally,
Yeah.
totally.
Well, that's about all I have. I'm good to wrap this up unless you have any closing thoughts. But we will be streaming the Champions League game, Bayern versus Chelsea. So stay tuned for that one.
Yeah, stay tuned for that. Stay tuned for a little bit later this week. I will have an episode with Rudar X, who I've had an episode with in the past. TBD when that will drop, but we'll talk about some things Chelsea probably and just have a great conversation as usual. And then I'm sure we'll recap this weekend's huge matches, probably preview that match next week against Bayern for Chelsea. So just massive things heading here, and can't wait.
Yeah, massive things on all accounts. The international break is going on. Some people take a break, but we don't. We keep going, we keep chipping away. We got a lot to talk about in this awesome world of football. It's just a beautiful place to be. So thanks for sticking around. Thanks for joining us in this community, in this footballing world. And be sure to subscribe to the YouTube channel here at Always Bayern Chelsea. Leave us a like, leave us a comment, especially about the intro. Again, yeah, I think that's all I have to say to round us out here. We'll just give you a Mia San Mia.
Up the Chelsea.